Welcome to MSP Unplugged. I'm your host, Paco Lebron. This is the place to learn about how to run your IT service business, whether you're a one-person shop or a boutique MSP, as some people like to say, or leading a team for the journey. This is the place for you. Let me go ahead and introduce you to my partner in crime, my co-host, the one, the only, Mr. Rick Smith over at Renactus Technology. Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the nice dramatic introduction there, but
Oh,
I'm doing
I
great.
gotta give you a little props here and there and stuff like that. How's the week been so far for you?
It's been eventful. Pretty good. Can't complain. Been doing business, so that's what counts.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Very cool. I don't remember if we recorded an episode prior to this one, but for those that don't know, I had an eventful weekend. I threw out my back. So I think I called you about that. I was
Yeah.
laying out on a Sunday afternoon, had a couple days there. So hopefully we'll be recovering very soon to kind of do that. So it's been definitely an interesting transition, especially with travels happening. I think by the time this episode airs, we will have already been. I think I'm on the flight back from Channel Futures in Miami. So hopefully I will make it there. My back has hopefully been so far so good. Let's make sure nothing else happens to lock that up anyway. But the show must go on. We have a great guest that we have today. He actually was sponsoring our TechCon Unplugged. If you missed it over in Jersey this past September, more news to come very, very soon about that. We're excited to share a lot about the details and where we will be, which is probably the lesser, how do they say, the most worst kept secret of where it's going to be next year, because I've already heard some attendees saying where we're going to be. So it's going to be a great time there. But who am I talking about? I am talking about this gentleman here on the screen. It is Jason Miller. Not to be confused with Jason Miller from Unbound Digital. No, I'm talking about Jason Miller, founder and CEO of Bitlyft. Jason, how are you today?
I am doing great. I am doing great on this fall rainy morning that we're having here in Michigan.
I am right there with you in Chicago. It has
Yeah.
been dreary. It has been cold. And we had one 80-degree day. I think it was like 2 days ago, but it just went right back to the good old fall weather.
I
Yeah.
guess I'm the weather winner today in New Jersey, huh? We have
Well,
sunny skies, so it'll be 77 degrees today.
oh, so you got what we had.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's happening. See, Chicago got it, then Michigan got it. Now you're getting it.
Yeah, I know. We'll have the sucky weekend.
Yep.
Right.
Now,
Well,
Jason,
thank you
appreciate
for,
you.
yeah,
No,
thank
so
you.
I was gonna say I appreciate you taking the time to come out on the show here today, but wanted to see if you can give us a little bit of an intro, kind of your origin story of how you kind of came to the space and how Bitlift came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paco, and thank you, Rick. I really appreciate you guys having me on the show today. And, um, you know, uh, Bitlift really started out of the need that I seen in the space. I had an amazing IT career so far, and what I believe that helped me really put like where I am today. I think we probably can all say that I have no regrets about my past. I started my IT career in 1996 as a network admin, system admin, when firewalls were like really just starting to come on the scene, right? And um, just stuff like that. And so it really gave me a good understanding of um, where things were in the space. And I've seen the next gen this and next gen that, right? Um, you fast forward, I had the opportunity to do another startup in Tampa, Florida called Reviora. We were a cloud ERP provider working with the Microsoft Dynamics stack. And I was the engineer, building the data center equipment and putting everything together, because at that time we were switching in 2008 2009 from colo and everything being hosted in the data center to cloud. And which everybody now it's just somebody else's equipment, just somebody else's co-location data center, right? But the funny thing is when we started switching our collateral and our messaging from co-location to cloud, we actually started winning more deals. Um, and it really gave me a good understanding of seeing the space at the time around cybersecurity and managed services, and what was successful, what do customers want, and what do customers not want. Um, and then you fast forward, we successfully sold that in 2015, and I took about a year and a half to just did some independent consulting, and then I quickly realized that independent consulting wasn't for me. I wanted to build another company, as crazy as that sounds. So, in late 2016, Bitlyft became to be. And I specifically chose focusing in on SIM as a service and SOC as a service because of the importance of logs. And I shared with you all the way back to 1996 is because, in the early days, we were setting up and installing equipment, racking and stacking software and hardware, and we were turning off logs because at that point in time we sort of didn't quite understand the importance of logs. It wasn't just me, it was really the industry. um, Now you fast forward and we hold logs sacred. I mean, we're holding logs now for 1 year, 3 years, 7 years, just depending on the industry vertical, and there's standardizations rolling out now around this. So that's just a brief background on me. I'm sure we can get into more as time rolls on.
No, those are all great points. I think, and I know this is going to be near and dear to Rick's heart, is co-location. I haven't heard that term in many and many a times. I always tease Rick because he's a very on-prem guy, whereas I've kind of braced the cloud more as kind of my first adoption moving forward. So we always have these great conversations on on-prem or not on-prem. That is the question. But I remember the day, and it's funny that you say that, right? I think another piece to really dive onto is that you've mentioned terms like there's like the cloud and next gen, and then when we really peel back the layers, we just find out it's all great marketing terms because it's literally just what we had but in a different flavor, right? Or some other type of situation, right? So that's always fun for me to hear that. And then like how you just mentioned, it's like, it's just someone else's equipment. Like, yep, that's exactly the deal from there. And then you got public, you got private, and then the whole gambit of it's all, depending on your flavor, that's what you got from there. But well, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just laughing when Jason was talking about the logs. So I remember back when I was a network admin, it'd be like, you check the logs? Check the logs? Like, I ain't checking the logs. What the hell's all that jibber jabber? I'm not checking the logs.
So what am I looking for in the logs?
Yeah, right. What am
I? Who wants that job?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's such a good point to understand that where, I think, okay, so perfect example, like there's a lot of conversation around firewalls, for example, and the logs that are ingested from firewalls. But the argument is 80% of the traffic that you're analyzing in there, if you do not have SSL inspection on, you're not going to see anything anyway. And I know 80%, 90% of peers that in the space don't even have it turned on. So all you're going to see is the encrypted traffic, and you don't see what's going through anyway, ingested in those logs, right? And so, I mean, you see the logs, but it's not, you're not going to see what the traffic is that you really are looking for if you don't have some of the features enabled or really into the point where you have to get into someone that knows what they're talking about to look at the logs, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's what I was gonna say. That's the other part,
right? And so those two things, right? That's why obviously a SIEM provider or SIM provider is so important because
potato.
Yeah, is that right? Because I think about 5 years ago or so, it was so out of reach for a lot of MSPs to get a solution like that because it was always viewed as an enterprise solution, the Splunks of the world and things of that nature, to try and ingest that type of log and try and review them, where now we're getting to a point where it's so important, and businesses like yourself has made it attainable for those to really have a partner to partner with to really view that. Can you dive in a little bit more on kind of what Bitlyft offers, some of the different services to MSPs, and how you really are not so much a vendor, but really a partner for them when it comes to these type of things?
Yeah, this is so important for Bitlyft. It's near and dear to my heart and my team's heart that we explain some of those things that you're bringing up. A lot of the environments that we get into with partners and end customers, we realize that the configuration isn't necessarily like what it should be. And
Right.
so the whole spirit of a partnership isn't to come in and say, start pointing fingers or maybe even pointing out, the bad in the environment. That's the whole reason why you're there and we're there is to improve this environment, right? And so our goal is to identify areas of improvement that we would bring recommendations to, you know, turning on SSL inspection, or maybe even helping them change up and bring a recommendation of like, you don't have enough VLANs. Your network is relatively flat. Everything is talking to everything. And so if you do have a malware outbreak, or if you do have a machine that gets infected, it has the possibility of infecting everything, right? Versus just one slice, one endpoint, or one slice of the business. And so there are a lot of items that we get into when we're working with a partner that we want to make sure that we're like, where are you with this customer? Or what have you been able to do and what have you not been able to do yet? So that I'm a firm believer that cybersecurity is not a one size fits all. You cannot ship a onesie to everybody and expect them to fit into it, right? And the whole thing here is when you look at SIM and you look at log management and you look at SOC as a service and you look at the space, and then you look at how many players are in the space today, the reality is the space needs definition. And that is one of the things that we've been going after is trying to define this. It's so important that people realize, partners realize, and end customers realize that MDR, or managed detection and response, or monitoring detection and response, this acronym that's out there, XDR, right? They're sort of really confusing. Um, the importance of getting logs from everything in the environment: authentication logs, cloud logs, on-prem logs, logs of your email. So if you're using Office 365 or Google Gmail, or if you still have an on-prem Exchange server, um, the whole thing here is you need to get logs from everything. Correlation needs to happen. And Bitlyft is bringing this to partners and end users through partnerships, through MSPs and MSSPs, uh, at a scalable process, in a scalable way. So a price per user per month, and they get the whole bundle, right? The days are really gone where you have to go and buy a big SIM and it's a 6-figure purchase or a 7-figure purchase and then hire a whole team. We're able to bring this at a cloud model, right? At a consumable model for people that are smaller organizations to larger organizations to be able to consume this. And that's really important, uh, especially in today's landscape.
Yeah, I mean, Rick, I think, we probably have heard this requirement from cyber insurance companies, from other regulators that, hey, do you have a SIM? Or do you have a SIEM? And, I think there's been a point where some of our peers and a lot of our attendees and even our listeners all have said the same thing. What the heck is a SIM? What the heck is a SIEM? And so, you have companies like Bitlyft that are trying to educate the masses. Because Jason, I think you hit it right on the head, is that we've heard the term, but we don't know what we're looking at. And now you have that previous model that when we do the research and it's like a 6-figure purchase, you need a team behind it and things of that nature. And now we're getting to a point where the need has allowed for that particular system, product, services, and businesses like yours to modify and adopt what is really needed in the phrase. Rick, I'm curious onto your perspective on how this has really gone through the changes of just technology in general. I think that we've gone through from the beginning part of, hey, we just need an AV, to now a series of tools. How have you been kind of really working on your search and like making sure that you're checking the right boxes for what you're providing to your clients.
Well, it's been one of those, just as the technology has moved, so have we, per se. But also, is just we've been trying to take it in chunks, right? So
Right.
you know, again, we focused on AV, then we had to go to next gen AV, then we started, I guess, what would you call MDR, and now there's XDR, and like there's all these things, and then you forget though, like, we've been talking about, you need a SOC, you need a SIM, and we keep going back and forth, sim or scene, but you need a sim, and it goes back to what Jason said. It's the importance, and each thing we've added on, we've had to have a why, right? Why is
Right.
this important? And that's why I can't sell or implement something I don't understand, right? It just doesn't work, and we've had for a long time though, like we've known, particularly logs, you got to be able to see the logs. And like I said, I used to be the joke back in the day when I worked corporate, nobody wanted to look at the log because nobody knew what the hell they were looking for, first of all, right?
Yep.
So if I found the log and I read it, okay, nice reading, but I don't know what the hell that means. And
Well, even the configuration of it too that Jason mentioned, right? Like I think some of them are set to like 7 days, and then after 7 days, like you don't even know the setting of it, and you're like, oh, well, sorry, I can't look at that. Thanks, have a nice day.
Right, we missed that one.
Yeah.
And so it's good. I'm sorry, you go, Jason.
Yeah, I was gonna, like most devices, you look at network switches, you look at firewalls, they don't have a huge repository on them, a large hard drive to
Right.
hold logs for more than 7 days or even 5 in some circumstances. So totally, Rick, you're very well acquainted with this. I can see.
Yeah, I've been down this road, but no, but it goes back to, again, it's the why, and why is it important for us? Because we need to, like, there are gonna be situations we need to trace something, we need to track something, we need to know what's happening or know what has happened to basically help you predict what's coming, right? So I think that's the part that a lot of us, quote unquote, I don't want to say miss, but I say a lot of us just don't necessarily focus on right now, right? And companies like Bitlyft, companies who are bringing this to us and saying, hey, this is the why you need to do this, right? And then you can't do it, or you don't have time to do it, so we'll do it for you, which is, again, what the purpose is and how it helps. But I think, getting back to the original question, is that you take it all in chunks, but once you understand why it's important, it becomes one of those necessities for your business, to protect yourself, to protect your clients, and to protect your business as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think in the space today, I mean, we are so well versed around video cameras on our homes. Ring has really blown up. I'll give you that one example of a doorbell, right? And then it's spawned to, I've got all these cameras, exterior around the house, interior, those types of things. So we've done a really good job of understanding physical security with video cameras, badge access, things like that. Um, but when it comes to digital security, the SIM and monitoring the logs 24/7, 365, and having something that is evaluating what the logs are saying as a real-time stream is our digital video surveillance system for that network, for the network, for authentication, for compromised account, everything. I mean, a SIM can tell you if you have a compromised account within seconds, because it can realize that the real user is logged in and another user is logged in from a different location. With today's technology, you can realize that real quick. And that is one of the main ways that uh, it starts with phishing, right? And then you have a compromised account, and then next thing you know, you get malware dropped on systems that eventually will turn into ransomware. Um, so I'm playing off of and talking about what you were mentioning, right? We evolved, right? And so we have to really realize, like, all the things that we're doing to physical security, we should be applying those methodologies to our digital security as well, right? Which is detection systems.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about really trying to figure out, all right, for the MSP, how to improve their services. But, we even actually had this question on our webinar that we just had this past week, is that MSPs care about really two things. how is this going to save me time, and how is this going to save me money? And with your solution, and obviously the education piece is so important, right, on helping improve those services. How has Bitlyft really helped not only improve those services, but really dialed in the dollars to donuts for MSPs on why, A, this is a solution they should be looking into if they haven't looked into it, but B, what you bring to the table and helping them with this solution?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the most powerful thing that we do is we bring basically a snap-in solution for them,
Mm,
where they don't need to go out and procure software or people or the processes or even really the knowledge other than the surface level. Like, I know of this and I know that I
mhm,
need it and I should be offering this because other MSPs and MSSPs are offering this,
mm.
or they're starting to talk about it.
Right.
So we give them the ability to snap Bitlyft into their stack. We become an extension of their team. Next thing you know, that MSP will have eyes and ears on their network and their customers' network. And that MSP will be able to sleep better at night knowing that there's a 24/7 SOC looking at that customer and even proactively telling them, like, hey, we don't like that we see traffic coming from here and going to here. And that's something that probably should be changed. And so what we've seen is we've become not only a strong partnership, and we bring a level of expertise literally overnight to that partner, but at the same time, we're bringing recommendations to the partner that is probably going to create more project work for them.
Mm.
We're going to give recommendations on this equipment's too old, it's not giving us the detail that we need, they really should be upgrading this or that. Configuration changes need to happen out here in Office 365 or Google Gmail. They need MFA, across the entire environment. These service accounts should be changed because of here, here, and here. We'll actually be able to start giving them reasons why they should be doing the work that they're doing.
Okay.
If that makes sense, it's like I love why Rick brought up the why, and there's always, like, we're not associating work just because we're associating work because this is actually causing a risk, and if we don't go fix this, and now that we know about it, the risk could be exponential. It could shut down the business or cause the business to be out of business. Um, and so with that information, you can now go to the customer and say, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and here's why, right?
Yeah. Now, Jason, I know that you had just mentioned, and I think a lot of people will hear SIM and they think just network logs and network ingestion. And obviously, you just said Microsoft 365 and things like that. And I remember hearing, I don't know if it was at the event that you threw at in Bourbonnais or if it was in the webinar, but I remember you saying, like, look, for us, just give us all the logs you have. And so,
Yeah.
what are the places that you're ingesting those logs from? It sounds like obviously we have network equipment, firewalls, things of that nature. Sounds like Microsoft 365. Is there other systems and places that you ingest logs from, as far as a few, for those that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, your Microsoft Azure logs, your Microsoft Office 365 logs, there's within the Microsoft ecosystem, there's at least 5 major log sources right out of the bat, right out of the get-go, that you have to be ingesting. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not ingesting all 5 of those, you're literally missing important data.
Mm.
Um, Google Gmail, your firewalls, your network, Amazon Web Services. Out in Amazon, there's lots of areas to be collecting logs from. CloudTrail, CloudWatch. There's a whole security hub. The reality is we ask the customer and the partner for a asset inventory, both hardware and software, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to understand, what do you rely on to do business? Salesforce, right? We can collect logs from that. There's literally almost everything that uh, is software and hardware produces a log somewhere. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
question is whether it's going to bring value from a security context or an IT operations context. If it's not going
Gotcha.
to bring value to IT ops or security, well, then we probably will drop the log. Maybe we'll save it in just Amazon S3
Mm-hmm.
for 90 days or a year, but we may choose not to bring it into the SIM. right? And that's because it might not be bringing value to investigations or incident response or to IT ops. But the major systems, think about the brands that we use all day, every day, you know, your endpoints, whether you're a CrowdStrike or a Sophos or a SentinelOne or a Cylance Protect, right? EDR, um, the endpoint itself, Mac OS or a Windows OS, you want to be collecting logs from everything that you depend on a daily basis. They are breadcrumbs to the story. They're breadcrumbs to what's happening. And they'll also tell you whether data is leaving the building or data's, you know, staying where it should be. You know, who touched those files? When did they touch them? Did they touch 5 files or did they touch 1,500 files, right? Is the employee getting ready to churn out and they just downloaded a copy of everything they plan on taking with them? You know, that's the today that's one of the real insider threats, you know, is employee churn, and then employees take documents with them, you know, about that's actually owned by the company. uh, and then, you know, you have other indicators of compromise along the way that can be from your Office 365 or your cloud systems. um, we find a lot of VPN solutions, whether they're built out in the cloud or um, they're on-prem. You need to have logs coming from your VPN systems into the system, into the Bitlyft system, so that we can make good decisions. Are these real users coming in or are they not? Right.
Gotcha. Now, through all that and in that conversation, obviously for those listening, there may be some that need a little bit of help. And
Mhm.
so, you know, does Bitlyft have a partner program, or how is your onboarding process? And in the frame of someone is interested, they reach out to you, how long does it take them to kind of hit the ground running with their own services to roll out to their clients?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say realistically, we do have a great partner program. I would say it's always improving, right? You find out through partners like we need to change this or that. I
Mhm.
think it's probably the most flexible, and we do a lot of training though. They'll talk with our SOC engineers. This is what it looks like to launch customer one, customer two, customer three. This is the hand holding that we're going to do with you as an MSP and a partner, and we're never going to leave you. That the whole point of it is that you should never feel alone in this journey. Um, your customer will always stay your customer. That's one of the biggest things. I have dealt with the bigger companies in the space. I won't name names, but you know, they eventually say, well, you know, you sold them us, so they're now our customer. Well, maybe, but without that partnership, you would have never landed that customer.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so important to make sure that people know that Bitlyft looks at them as like they are the partner that are bringing customers to us. This is a partnership. We would have never had them we'd have never had that customer without them. And then you know, the whole thing is not to really add more workload to their plate. Most MSPs in the space, their workload's already high, you know, and their plates are full. And
Mhm.
so they're looking to snap this in and be able to make some money along the way, but also not be able to not to have to like retrain their staff and go through extensive services. So we do the sales training, we do engineering training, and then we make sure that everybody is clearly understands uh, the customer journey. So we do a lot of flow diagrams. I love flow diagrams because everybody sees visually like
Yeah.
where we are, where we're going to end up, and it sets expectations. And I think if you set the expectations right, you reduce a lot of arguments and disagreements later on. So
No, that's for sure. I mean, I know that Rick loves his flow diagrams. That's for sure. Um,
Pretty
but
colors.
pretty cool. No, and you know, and I think that just speaks to, you know, how do you make sure that you reach that message across to the partner, right, and that they understand and embed it in there. Because I know that, you know, me and Rick talk about this all the time, where we'll enroll in a solution, and either we don't have the time for it, you know, we don't get reached out to, and then there's months that go by, and then because we didn't have the perceived value from it, we end up separating, and then that's when the conversations start to happen. That's where how do we make sure that this works for you, and it's already a little too late because the value is already perceived not there. So that's great that, you know, you are speaking with the engineers that are looking at this thing, understanding what's the stack, really having that hand holding white glove touch, being able to do so as well. So you know, to round out the show here, Jason, I think we talked a lot, but we probably could talk a lot more about what we have going on for today. Is there any lasting words, any call to action that you want to make sure our listeners have? Because we wanted to ensure that they did hear mostly and know a little bit more about Bitlyft. And for them being interested, how would they reach out, or any lasting words you may have?
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just ask one question before you do that. I apologize. I know we're short on time. There are a lot of MSPs who deal with companies that they already have they offer a quote unquote SOC with their security, platform, right? Now, with you guys, you're offering a SOC, you're offering a SIM. It's an all-in-one scenario. Tell us what would be, and I guess you can wrap this up in Paco's question. What would be the advantage of using a Bitlyft along with those solutions or in lieu of those solutions? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that question quite a bit. Is that first and foremost, Bitlyft, our whole SOC team is United States based. We don't have any people over the U.S. outside of the U.S. And we do that out of design. It costs us more, but the reality is that we are trying to deliver a high quality offering. And the other thing is I think in this day and age, you know, we're a cybersecurity company. Do we want to take the risk of hiring contractors or another third-party organization in another country that we can't control, and then they have access and looking at the logs and the details? I think that money could often persuade them pretty easily to do other things for their adversaries. So I think definition is super important here. So what is the defined SOC? What's defined in SIM? And what are those offerings in the space that are out there? I know for Bitlyft, you know, we work with Graylog as a primary SIM offering. Graylog is really well known in the space. It started as an open source. It is probably what I would call the Swiss Army knife or the AS400. If anybody out there knows what an AS400 is, I would consider it like the AS400 for a SIM. Yeah. But it is rock solid, steady runs. AS400 run banks and casinos and huge hotels, and they're bought because, you know, they're rock solid. And I would consider Graylog rock solid. And so one of the major components that is behind this, and this is what I would encourage people to reach out to us and go to our website, you know, www.bitlyft.com, or reach out to us and just have a conversation, is like you said, Paco, and Rick, you alluded to it, is like in the marketing realm, everybody is trying to elevate next gen or XDR, but really they're not really defining with clarity what are they getting behind those services, right? What are you monitoring and how are you monitoring it? And I think that is so important, because that is the very definition of what you're going to be delivered. And you don't want to walk away with a misinterpretation after buying something and feel like you have buyer's remorse. But in today's landscape, we really cannot afford to lose out on collecting logs from certain assets. And we should not only be collecting logs from just endpoints. And some of these MDR providers are only collecting logs from the EDR agent off of the endpoint. And they're not collecting logs from Office 365 or the firewalls or the other things that the company relies on. So when you do have an incident, you're only going to have the logs from the endpoint, which is very narrow-minded thinking, right? It's only one slice of the pie when you have 10 other areas, right? So I know we're short on time, and I hope I've slightly answered your question, Rick. But it's a
You have.
very it's one that almost requires a little bit more time. And I know everybody's like, "What's your 30-second elevator pitch?" Um, it's really hard to talk about what we do in 30 seconds because of its complicatedness and the details that are required. The devil's in the details, right? Um, but I would just encourage people to reach out. You're not going to get a sales pitch. You're going to get a conversation, and we lead with education. And if we ultimately decide, we're aligned and we want to work together, we're going to support you, and we're going to make sure that you feel like it is a hand-in-hand boutique offering partnership. And we're not looking for hundreds and thousands of partners, right? Because that sometimes isn't scalable and leaves you with, hey, I'm just a number and you don't know my name. And so we're looking to build long lasting relationships that do scale.
No, yeah, that's great points. Mr. Smith, is there any lasting words before we round out this episode here?
No, I just want to thank you, Jason, for taking the time to speak to us today and tell us a little bit about Bitlyft. And I encourage everyone, again, as I always do, take a look at them, see if they fit what you need, and take it from there. But again, thank you for your time and educating us a little bit today.
Yeah, thank you.
No, yeah, absolutely. Jason, thank you for taking out the time this morning to do that. Thank you for being a partner for MSP Unplugged and TechCon Unplugged this year. We greatly appreciate your support as well. And for all of you listening today, if you like the content you're hearing, tune in every Tuesday and Thursday and watch the video podcast on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button so that you are aware when a video is being published at that exact moment. Now, if you don't have your notifications turned on, you're not going to get the love. But we understand sometimes you want to take us on the go, which you can. We're on your favorite podcatcher app. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, to name a few. Once again, thank you so much for listening today, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.